Welcome back, guys. This is your friend Shinobi Addict 2.0, and we are back with a new amazing fanfics. Which is what if Naruto was impossible to hit part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. Now let's enjoy the fanfic. Kushina Uzumaki, wife of the 4th Hokage, had just given birth to twins, a girl and a boy. The girl, now named Natsuki, had inherited her mother's striking red hair and violet eyes. The boy, Naruto, bore his father's blonde hair and bright blue eyes. But there was no time for pleasantries. A masked man had infiltrated the hidden cave where Kushina had gone into labor. In a swift and merciless act, he had successfully released the 9 tails from her. Now, the beast rampaged through the village, and countless shinobi fought desperately to subdue it. Minato, the 4th Hokage, had rushed Kushina and their newborns to the hospital, placing them under the care of the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. As he turned to leave, Kushina clutched his cloak tightly. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice firm with resolve. Minato hesitated. "No, Kushina. The extraction took too much from you. You're barely alive," he replied, worry etched across his face. "I'll be fine," she insisted, eyes blazing with determination. "I have to do this, for our children, and for the village." Minato stared at her for a moment, then finally nodded. He knew there was no stopping her. With their children left in trusted hands, the two parents stepped into the chaos, ready to protect what they held most dear. Minato and Kushina arrived on the battlefield to a scene of devastation. The 9 tails raged through the village, its roar echoing as it tore through anything in its path. Countless shinobi had already fallen in a desperate attempt to stop the beast. Without hesitation, Minato vanished in a flash and launched a counterattack. But no matter how hard he tried, the rampage continued unchecked. The 9 tails' fury was overwhelming. Realizing they were out of time, Minato reappeared beside Kushina. "Kushina, I have to take a risk," he said urgently. Kushina turned to him, her expression laced with worry. "What is it?" "The 9 tails. It needs to be sealed again," he replied, his tone heavy with the weight of the decision. "Seal it in me," she said without hesitation. "I was its previous Jinchuriki. I can take it back." Quote. Minato shook his head. "No. We need you to restrain it with your chakra chains during the sealing. You're the only one who can hold it down long enough." Kushina's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then, who are you planning to seal it into?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Minato paused. Then, quietly, he said, "One of our children." Kushina gasped. "Minato, they were just born. How can you even think?" "I know," he interrupted, his voice strained and sorrowful. "I know, Kushina. But who else can I ask? Can I look another mother in the eye and ask her to sacrifice her child? I can't. This burden, it has to stay with us. It's the only way, to protect the village, and to protect them." Quote. Silence hung between them, broken only by the distant roar of the beast they had once kept at bay. Kushina's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, resolute. "Then we do this together." In a flash of light, Minato reappeared on the battlefield, holding their newborn twins, Natsuki and Naruto. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage, stood behind him, solemn and silent. Kushina's eyes widened. "In whom will we seal it?" she asked, her voice trembling. Minato looked down at their children, then met her gaze. "Natsuki," he said after a moment. "She's the eldest, and she carries your Uzumaki genes. She's strong, even now. I originally wanted to split the 9 tails, half in her, half in Naruto. But I think it's better if one of them bears the burden, and the other becomes their strength, their support." Quote. Kushina's eyes filled with tears. "Minato, you're talking like you're about to die." His expression turned grim. "I don't know, Kushina. But something inside me, it tells me I won't make it through this." He gently handed Naruto to Hiruzen. "Please, take care of Kushina and our children." Tears streamed down Kushina's cheeks as she clutched Natsuki close. "No, Minato, we don't have time, he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Drawing a deep breath, Kushina nodded and stood. Golden chakra chains burst forth from her, slamming into the raging nine tails and pinning it in place. The beast roared in fury, but it could not move. Minato stepped forward, forming the hand signs. Reaper Death Seal. The air grew cold. The Shinigami appeared behind him, its ghastly form towering, its blade in hand. I wish to seal the nine tails, Minato said, his voice steady despite the pain in his heart. Seal it into my daughter, Natsuki Uzumaki. The Shinigami's blade gleamed in the darkness. Minato knew the price. But for his family, for the village, and for the future, he was willing to pay it. The Shinigami's hollow eyes stared into Minato's soul. Its voice echoed like a whisper from the grave. Are you willing to give up your soul? Minato didn't hesitate. He nodded. Yes. For my daughter, my son. For the village. With care, he gently laid Natsuki down on the sealing altar, her tiny body unaware of the fate about to be placed upon her. The Reaper Death Seal began to take form, glowing with eerie light as the Shinigami prepared to extract the Nine Tails chakra. Sensing what was about to happen, the beast howled in fury. It roared, struggling violently against Kushina's chakra chains, until, with a final burst of desperation, it stretched a massive claw toward the infant girl, aiming to kill her before the seal could be completed. Time seemed to slow. Kushina's motherly instincts ignited in an instant. No. She threw herself in front of Natsuki, shielding her with her body as the claw pierced through her. Blood sprayed as the attack landed, but she held firm, refusing to let the nine tails harm her child. Minato's heart clenched, but his hands didn't stop. He poured the last of his strength into the seal, and with a silent prayer, he transferred a fragment of his chakra, and Kushina's, into Natsuki. A gift for the future, a final safeguard. One day, when Natsuki needed them most, they would be there to guide her. The sealing completed. The nine tails roared in agony before being forcefully drawn into the child's tiny body. The Reaper finished its work and reached for Minato's soul. At that moment, Natsuki let out a loud, desperate cry, a newborn's wail piercing through the chaos, filled with both pain and life. A few feet away, Hiruzen stood still, cradling Naruto in his arms. The boy's eyes slowly opened, bright and clear, glowing with a piercing blue light in the midst of darkness. Even as a baby, there was something unshakable in that gaze. The Shinigami, still present in its spectral form, turned its gaze toward the infant Naruto cradled in Hiruzen's arms. Its eyes narrowed. Those eyes, the spirit muttered, almost in disbelief. Impossible. I haven't seen them in centuries. It leaned in slightly, its voice echoing in the wind. The six eyes, the last one to possess them was Satoru Gojo. But that clan was wiped out. How? This child isn't even of Gojo blood, and yet. The Shinigami's expression turned unreadable, as if puzzled by a mystery even it couldn't comprehend. Very well, I'll be watching you, child. Quote. With its task complete, the Reaper reached out and took Minato's soul. His body slumped beside Kushina, the sealing now done. Minato, with his last breath, turned to the third Hokage. Hiruzen-sama, please, take care of them. I want them to be honored, not as Jinchuriki, but as heroes. They saved the village from the Nine Tails. And with that, the fourth Hokage closed his eyes for the final time. Kushina, pale and bleeding, struggled to remain conscious. Her body trembled, her life force fading fast. Hiruzen-sama, please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Let me hold them. One last time. Without hesitation, Hiruzen stepped forward and gently placed both infants, Natsuki and Naruto, into her arms. Kushina cradled them tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks and landing on their peaceful, sleeping faces. Natsuki, Naruto, I love you both with all my heart, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm sorry I can't stay with you. Please, forgive me. She gently pressed her forehead against theirs. You'll need each other. Natsuki, protect your little brother. Be his strength. Naruto, support your sister, be her light. Stay together, always no matter what. Quote. As her tears fell one last time, Kushina smiled weakly. The night was silent again. Two orphans, one burdened by power, the other by destiny. And far above, the moon watched over them. A few days later, the Konoha Council convened in the dimly lit chambers of the Hokage Tower. The air was heavy with grief and tension, the wounds from the Nine Tails rampage still fresh in every heart. Black banners draped the walls in mourning for the fallen fourth Hokage, the village still mourning the death of their beloved Hokage. The room was silent, filled with clan heads, civilian representatives, and administrative advisors. No one spoke, until he did. Danzo, his tone as cold and calculating as ever, broke the silence. What are we going to do with the fourth's children? Quote. The question, simple on the surface, held a sinister undertone that made several council members glance at him warily. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the former Hokage and now interim leader once again, kept his gaze on the table, hands folded. Minato wished for them to be hailed as heroes, he said solemnly. But I fear, that may not be possible. Why? Fugaku Uchiha asked, his voice even but heavy with emotion. Though the Uchiha clan head often wore a stoic mask, the sorrow in his eyes betrayed him. Minato had been a friend, perhaps one of the few outside the clan he respected. Isn't it our duty to honor his final request? Several others in the room nodded in agreement. Even those not aligned with the ninja world felt the weight of that wish. Hiruzen sighed deeply, the years in his voice. If the village learns that the Kyuubi is still alive, and sealed inside a newborn, there will be panic. Fear. Possibly hatred. The people are still trembling from the attack, they're not ready for that truth. Quote. He looked up, eyes grave. For their safety, and for the village's peace, it's best if their true legacy remains a secret, for now. The room fell silent again. Not out of agreement, but resignation. They understood his logic, even if it left a bitter taste in their mouths. Danzo smirked faintly in the shadows. Shikaku Nara leaned forward, hands clasped, his sharp mind already considering every angle. We understand the logic behind protecting the village, he said carefully. The people might not see them as heroes, but as the Kyuubi in human form. That kind of fear easily turns to hatred. He paused. The infants may not be hated now, but what about the fourth's wish? To see them honored. Minato made enemies, Hiruzen said gravely. If word spreads that his children survived, and worse, that one of them is a Jinchuriki, those enemies will come for them. They'll try to capture them, use them, weaponize them. For the children's safety, no one can know they are Minato's. A tense silence gripped the chamber. Then Fugaku Uchiha spoke, his deep voice cutting through the quiet. But is it truly right? He asked. To raise those children without knowledge of who their parents were. Without knowing the burden they carry. He looked around the room. In the long term, this secrecy could hurt them more than protect them. What happens when they grow, when they begin to ask questions? What happens when the truth is revealed too late? Hiruzen closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're right, Fugaku. Which is why, this won't be forever. Quote. He opened his eyes, voice steady and resolute. We will keep their heritage a secret until they're ready. When they become Chunin, or by the time they turn 16, we will tell them the truth. The village, too. Quote. The status of the infants shall remain classified, Hiruzen declared, his voice firm and unwavering despite his age. No one is to speak of it publicly. Any breach of this order will be met with swift execution. That is my decree. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. Even the proudest clan heads did not speak. Though old, Hiruzen's presence still commanded respect, and fear. Among the clan leaders, there was no fear of the Jinchuriki themselves. They understood the children were vessels, not monsters. But the civilian council, less knowledgeable and easily swayed by fear, whispered a different story. To them, the children weren't just carriers of the nine tails, they were the beast itself, wearing the faces of infants. Especially Nitsuki. Danzo, seated in silence, watched the civilians closely. He sensed their unease, their ignorance, and in that, he saw opportunity. When the time comes, I will act, he thought. Though Hiruzen understood the consequences, he made his choice. He had no place safe enough, no foster family strong enough to resist the weight of suspicion. In the end, he placed the children in the orphanage. Quietly. Without names. Without explanation. And so, the legacy of the fourth Hokage was hidden. And the future of his children left to the winds of fate. Minato and Kushina watched silently from beyond the veil, their hearts heavy as the scene unfolded before were granted this rare glimpse of the living realm by Shinigami. Their only thought echoed in unison. Hiruzen, you fool. To see their children left alone, abandoned by those they once trusted, filled them with a quiet, burning pain. But even amidst their sorrow, one question loomed in their minds. Why was the Shinigami showing them this? They dared not ask. The presence of the god of death was overwhelming, ancient, unreadable. And yet, the Shinigami did not glance their way. His attention was fixed solely on one figure. Naruto. I sense it, faint, but not mistaken. The power of the six eyes, dormant, yet alive. I must see for myself. A few days later, Hokage's office. The room was quiet, save for the sound of a few papers shuffling. Makoto and Fugaku Uchiha stood before Hiruzen Sarutobi, their faces filled with quiet determination. Hokage-sama, Makoto began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, we would like to adopt Nitsuki and Naruto. Quote. Hiruzen's eyes sharpened. Why? His tone was calm, but there was an undercurrent of caution. Makoto didn't hesitate. Kushina was my dear friend, and Fugaku shared a bond with Minato. The least we can do, out of respect for them, is raise their children as our own. We would give them the love and care they deserve. Hiruzen's expression softened momentarily, a small smile tugging at his lips. He looked down, contemplating her words. But soon, his smile faded into something far graver. I'm sorry, Makoto, he said quietly, his voice firm. I cannot allow it. Even if I wanted to, I can't. Makoto's heart sank. She had expected resistance, but not this. Why? She asked, her voice trembling slightly with disbelief. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant as if searching for the right words. It's not about what I want. The village, the system, is fragile. If people found out that the Uchiha clan adopted them, there would be consequences. He sighed, his tone heavy with the weight of his responsibility. Even if they're not holding the Kyuubi, it would be seen as an attempt to gain power. It would throw off the delicate balance we have. Trust me, Makoto, I would gladly give them to you, but the stakes are too high. Fugaku stepped forward, his expression tight with restrained anger. And what do you suggest we do, Hokage-sama? Leave them in an orphanage to grow up alone. Quote. Makoto's eyes were filled with disappointment, the hope she'd carried for so long now dimming. They are infants, they need a family. Don't they deserve that, even if just for their parents' sake? Hiruzen looked down at his desk, his fingers tapping lightly on the surface. I understand your pain, Makoto, he said, his voice softening, though the determination never left his gaze. If it were up to me alone, I would take them in as my own grandchildren. But you know how it is. Politics, the village's perception. I cannot simply ignore the feelings of others. As much as it breaks my heart, I must consider the bigger picture. Makoto clenched her fists, but her face remained calm. She understood the weight of his position, still, the answer didn't sit well with her. So, this is the only option? For them to stay alone? She asked, her voice quiet with resignation. Hiruzen nodded slowly, his face a mask of regret. Yes. For now, I have no other choice. 3 years later, as per Hiruzen's decree, no one dared speak publicly about the status of Nitsuki and Naruto. The village's lips remained sealed, but silence did not stop the paranoia from festering, especially among the civilian council, whose ignorance blurred the line between myth and reality. Rumors had begun to swirl. They called the children, Kyuubi reborn, particularly the girl, Natsuki. Her resemblance to Kushina and the visible whisker marks on her face only deepened the villagers' fear. And where fear bloomed, Danzo Shimura followed like a shadow. The vile man moved in silence, gathering whispers and rumors from the alleys and markets. The people spoke in hushed tones, but Danzo heard them all. Monsters, demons in human skin. Those were the words muttered by the fearful and the foolish. Danzo watched and waited. By the time they turned 4, the worst blow came when Hiruzen received word from the orphanage matron. "They've been kicked out?" he asked, his voice calm but tight. The woman bowed her head. "Yes, Hokage-sama. The other children, they were afraid. The whisker marks, the whispers, it was causing unrest." Quote, Hiruzen wanted to argue, wanted to rage, but the pain in his chest wasn't from anger, it was guilt. He had done this. By trying to protect them through secrecy, he had exposed them to rejection. Unable to reverse what was done, Hiruzen gave the twins an old, worn-down apartment on the edge of T. He village. He made sure it was stocked and secured. Monthly funds were arranged, and he made sure to visit them from time to time, never as a Hokage, but as someone they could trust. Eventually, both Naruto and Natsuki began to call him Gigi. Quote, the first time he heard it, Hiruzen nearly wept. For a moment, he felt warmth, like a grandfather being loved. But that warmth was quickly smothered by regret. Because behind their innocent laughter, the rumors only grew louder. Whispers turned into quiet avoidance, then into open disdain. Hiruzen considered stepping forward, revealing the truth of what happened that night. He could stop the rumors. He could clear their names. But the risk was too great. Enemy nations, spies, and remnants of those who feared the Kyuubi would come for them. If word got out that they were the children of the fourth Hokage, Jinchuriki or not, they'd be hunted. So he did nothing. And each day, as their eyes gleamed with trust when they called him Gigi, the weight in his chest only grew heavier. Danzo moved silently in the shadows, pulling the strings of influence within the village. Whispers became disgust. Disgust became fear. And fear turned into hatred. By the time Naruto and Natsuki turned 6, the villagers' resentment had grown cruel. That evening, as the sun dipped low and cast a long shadow over the stone streets, a group of villagers hurled stones at the twins. Naruto, acting on instinct, stepped in front of Natsuki, shielding her with his body. The stones hit hard, on his arms, back, and shoulders, but he didn't let out a sound. They didn't cry. They didn't run. They just walked, slowly, bleeding, toward their old, crumbling apartment. Inside, Natsuki knelt beside her brother, tears spilling down her cheeks as she cleaned the cuts on his skin. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why did you take the hits for me, Naruto?" He smiled through the pain. "Because you're my sister. It's my duty to protect you." Natsuki bit her lip, heart aching. "You should leave me. They hate you because you're with me. I don't even know why they call me demon or monster. But it's hurting you too. If you stay with me, they'll never stop." Naruto's smile faded. His fist clenched. Without thinking, he slapped her, not hard, but sharp enough to stun her. "Don't ever say that again." His voice shook. Not with anger, but with emotion. "We're brother and sister. We're all we've got. I don't care if the whole village hates me for staying by your side. I will never leave you. Don't you ever call yourself a burden to me." Silence fell between them. Only the sound of Natsuki's soft sniffles remained. Then Naruto smirked, trying to lighten the mood. "Besides, I'm your big brother. It's my job to protect you." Natsuki blinked, confused, then lightly smacked his forehead with a tearful smile. "Idiot. I'm your elder sister." Naruto raised an eyebrow, grinning. "What? We're twins. It doesn't even matter." "Still," Natsuki huffed, "I'm older. By 3 minutes." They both chuckled, sitting close, bruised but comforted. In a world that turned its back on them, they still had one thing the villagers couldn't touch, each other. The hatred didn't stop. Day after day, the beatings continued. Stones, sticks, fists, it never mattered. The villagers came with cruelty in their hearts, and the Anbu watched in silence. As always, Naruto threw himself in front of Natsuki, shielding her small frame with his own. She cried, begged him to stop protecting her, to run, to leave her behind, but he never did. When Naruto collapsed, bruised and bleeding, only then would the Anbu step in. Not to help, not to stop the violence, but to act as though nothing had happened. They would silently carry the twins to the hospital. And even there, the cruelty continued. The medics refused to treat them, ignoring their injuries and turning their backs. Only when Hiruzen's direct orders and threats came down did the hospital reluctantly provide the most basic care, treating the wounds with cold hands and colder hearts. Yet even with the world against them, Naruto and Natsuki stood firm. Side by side, always. Naruto refused to leave her alone, even for a second. He feared that if he looked away, even once, she might disappear forever. Then one day, after another brutal attack, as the Anbu escorted them like lifeless cargo, Natsuki looked up at one of them, her lips split, her voice shaking. Why does everyone hate us? The Anbu didn't even flinch. Because you deserve it, demon, he said coldly, eyes hidden behind his mask. She didn't reply. She just looked away, holding Naruto's limp hand tighter as silent tears fell. The Anbu didn't feel pity. They didn't act out of kindness. They were following orders, nothing more. Hiruzen tried to calm the village, tried to smother the flames of hatred. But every word, every effort, only seemed to make it worse. In the quiet of his office, staring into the flickering candlelight, Hiruzen regretted everything. His failure, his silence, his cowardice. Because of his incompetence, 2 innocent children were paying the price. While the children endured pain in the streets, political tension simmered like a storm waiting to break. The Uchiha clan, once proud pillars of Konoha, were now whispered about in shadows. Following the Kyuubi attack, suspicion had quietly taken root, and Danzo, ever the manipulator, fed it with poison-laced words. He blamed the Uchiha, publicly, indirectly, relentlessly. Only the Uchiha possess eyes powerful enough to control the Kyuubi, he'd remind the council. And to the civilians, we must remain vigilant, even if it means making hard choices. Quote, under his influence, the civilian council, along with Kaharu and Homura, began to act. At first subtly, then openly. Despite protests from the clan, and attempts by Hiruzen to defend them, the pressure grew. Until the Uchiha were forcibly relocated, moved to the outer edge of the village, a quiet exile within their own home. It was supposed to be, for the safety of the village. But everyone knew the truth. It was segregation. It was blame without proof. It was punishment wrapped in diplomacy. The Uchiha protested, demanded answers, appealed to tradition, to reason. But the council turned deaf ears. Danzo's roots had spread too deep. Hiruzen tried to slow the decay, to hold the center, but he was one voice against many, and age had wearied his will. In private, he lamented. He had failed again. First Minato, then Naruto and Natsuki, and now, the Uchiha. Is this the village we built? He whispered to no one. And still, the Uchiha were blamed. Still, the disrespect continued. Not since the founding of Konoha had the Uchiha been treated so coldly. Their pride, once a symbol of power and loyalty, had become a target. And Danzo, he watched from the shadows. Satisfied. Always one step closer to the world he desired. The noon was shining across Konoha. Footsteps thundered shouts. Hatred. Stones. Villagers, faces twisted with rage, chased 2 small children through the maze of streets. Naruto and Natsuki, now 7, ran for their lives. Their lungs burned. Their legs trembled. But still, they ran. Turning sharply into an alley, their hearts sank. A dead end. The brick wall rose like a prison gate. There was nowhere to go. They turned. Cornered. Naruto, without hesitation, stepped in front of Natsuki. He pulled her into a tight hug, wrapping his arms around her trembling form. "I've got you," he whispered, voice low, defiant. As if his small body alone could shield her from the world. The villagers came closer, fury in their eyes and sticks raised. Someone threw a stone. Then another. And another. They sailed through the air, aimed to hurt, to punish. But then, everything stopped. The stones froze mid-flight, suspended as if the air had turned to glass. One by one, they dropped harmlessly to the ground with soft clinks. Natsuki slowly opened her eyes, bracing for pain that never came. What she saw instead left her stunned. The stones hadn't touched them. Someone, had stopped them. A hush fell. Even the villagers paused, staring in confusion and fear. The alley felt charged, the air thick with invisible power. His eyes were still closed, his grip tight around his sister. But something ancient, something powerful had stirred. A protective force, born not of hatred or fear, but of love. The villagers froze in place, stunned. The stones they had hurled hung in the air for a moment, then dropped harmlessly to the ground without touching the children. Before anyone could react, an Anbu agent landed in front of them with silent precision. His dog-patterned mask and silver hair immediately set him apart. "What do you think you're doing?" The ANBU's voice was low, but sharp. "Hokage-sama ordered that no harm is to come to these children." A man from the crowd shouted in anger, "Why is the Hokage protecting demons? Or are you under their control too?" The Anbu let out a tired sigh, but his tone turned cold and cutting. "Leave. Now. Unless you want to be charged with treason." Reluctantly, the villagers backed off, still glaring with hatred before disappearing down the alley. Once the street quieted, the Anbu turned to the two children huddled at the dead end. They were trembling, bruised, and covered in dirt. He stepped closer. "Are you both okay?" Natsuki looked up, her eyes filled with fire and pain. "Why?" She spat, her voice laced with venom. "So you can bring them back to finish the job. Or maybe you're here to tell us we deserved it. That we're demons." The Anbu flinched. Natsuki studied him more closely. Her brows furrowed. "You're not one of the usual Anbu," she said sharply. "The others, they always stand and watch. You have silver hair. A dog mask." The Anbu nodded slowly. "I'm not them. I just returned from a long mission. I'm not here to harm you, I promise." He paused, then asked gently, "Can you tell me what happened?" Quote. Natsuki glared at him. "The usual." He knelt a little closer. "Please, I need to understand. Tell me clearly." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "You want to hear it? What? To feel better about yourself? To listen to our pain and go laugh about it later?" The Anbu didn't respond. "Fine," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "We were just walking, then, out of nowhere, they started chasing us. With sticks and stones. We ran for our lives, again." She looked away, trembling. "Are you happy now? That what you wanted to hear?" Silence hung in the air. The masked man said nothing, but the slight tension in his shoulders made it clear, her words had hit. The Anbu flinched at Natsuki's harsh words. For the first time, he truly felt the weight of what these children endured. I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to." "Whatever." Natsuki cut him off coldly. But then her eyes shifted. Naruto had collapsed beside her, unconscious, blood trickling from his nose. Her composure broke instantly. "Naruto." She gasped. "Naruto." She shook him desperately. "Please. No, wake up. Don't leave me. I'm sorry, I won't ever say that again. Please, just open your eyes." Tears streamed down her face as she clutched his still form. The ANBU's expression softened behind the mask. He stepped forward. "Don't worry," he said gently. "I'll take you both to the hospital." He carefully picked up the unconscious Naruto and the trembling Natsuki, then vanished in a blur of motion. Far beyond mortal reach, in a realm untouched by life or death, the Shinigami observed in silence. "That's it," the death god murmured. The boy has awakened his eyes, and used infinity for the first time. At the hospital, the dog-masked Anbu approached the front desk, still carrying the injured twins. "We need treatment," he said firmly. But the attending medic sneered. "We don't treat demons." The Anbu stared at him for a moment. Then sighed. In a flash, he vanished using Shunshin. Moments later, he reappeared, this time with the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, beside him. The medic paled, his arrogance vanishing in an instant. The Anbu stepped back and bowed. "Hokage-sama, this man refused to treat these children." Hiruzen's gaze turned cold. "I see," he said, his voice like stone. "Then hear this. You are hereby dismissed from duty." Immediately, the medic collapsed to his knees, pleading, but Hiruzen ignored him. He turned to the Anbu. "Take them in. Personally. Make sure they're treated." Quote. The masked shinobi nodded and carried Naruto and Natsuki deeper into the hospital, the Hokage walking beside him in heavy silence. Naruto stirred awake, groggy and disoriented. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled his nose. He blinked against the white lights of the hospital ceiling, then sat up suddenly, panic rising in his chest. "Natsuki! Natsuki!" he cried out, his voice raw with fear. The door opened quickly. "I'm fine, Naruto," Natsuki said gently, stepping into the room. Relief flooded his face as he saw her safe. She was followed by the Hokage and an unfamiliar Anbu, one he didn't recognize. Naruto's gaze darted between them. What happened?" Natsuki gave a small, tired shrug. "The usual. But, how did we end up here?" Naruto asked, confusion evident in his voice. She nodded toward the masked shinobi standing behind the Hokage. "He's new. I've never seen him before. He's the one who brought us here." Quote. Naruto looked at the Anbu, who wore a dog-like mask and had silver hair visible behind it. There was something different about him, not cold like the others. "Thank you," Naruto said softly. The Anbu gave a small nod. He didn't speak, but the way he stood, guarded yet calm, said enough. Hiruzen stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Naruto's shoulder. "You're safe now, both of you," the Hokage said, though his voice carried a hint of guilt beneath the reassurance. Hiruzen and the Anbu left the hospital room, leaving the children to rest. As they reached the Hokage's office, Hiruzen removed his hat and sat down with a heavy sigh. Kakashi stood across from him, his dog mask now removed, revealing a concerned expression. "What happened, Kakashi?" Hiruzen asked, voice low but tense. Kakashi folded his arms. "By the time I arrived, a mob had cornered them. I dispersed them, but something Natsuki said caught my attention. She mentioned that an Anbu, one of our own, watched silently as they were beaten, and told her she deserved it." Hiruzen's expression hardened. His jaw clenched. "Villagers. I expected their fear to twist into hatred. But Anbu, that is unforgivable," he said coldly, rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. "Kakashi, find out who that Anbu is. Eliminate them. Quietly." Kakashi nodded sharply, but then hesitated. "Hokage-sama." Hiruzen looked up. Kakashi continued, "Are Natsuki and Naruto, the children of Minato-sensei and Kushina-san?" There was a flicker of surprise in Hiruzen's eyes, but his face remained composed. "Why do you ask?" Quote. Kakashi looked toward the window, as if seeing the past. "Natsuki is like a mirror image of Kushina. Her eyes, her temper, her spirit, it's unmistakable. And Naruto, he's like a miniature Minato-sensei. Except, his eyes. They're different. Deeper. Wiser. Almost. And red hair like hers only comes from the Uzumaki bloodline." Hiruzen sighed, shoulders heavy with the weight of years. "Yes, Kakashi. They are." Quote. Kakashi's eye narrowed behind his mask. "Then, why?" he asked. "Why are they hated? Why was the truth hidden? Why didn't we protect them properly?" The old Hokage leaned back, visibly burdened. "I made a mistake. A grave one. I thought if no one knew, they would be safe. I believed secrecy would protect them from the enemies of their parents. But, the opposite happened. Because of my incompetence, the village treats the children of heroes like monsters. And because of that, they suffer every day. There was a long silence between them. Then Hiruzen spoke again, voice firm. But I will correct it. I swear it, not just as Hokage, but as the man who failed their parents. Quote, far beyond the mortal realm, in a dimension untouched by time, the Shinigami stood silently, his eyes fixed on the shifting threads of fate. Gojo, he said, his voice booming like 1,000 bells across the void. A moment later, a man with hair as white as snow and a blindfold covering his eyes appeared, lounging in midair with his arms folded. It was Gojo Satoru. You called me? Gojo asked, his tone casual. You know I'm busy. Even in the afterlife, I don't get a break. The Shinigami didn't even glance at him. Did you forget you died centuries ago? Now stop whining and look at this. Curious, Gojo turned his head toward the portal-like mirror floating before them. Inside, he saw a familiar scene, the birth of a boy with bright blonde hair. Wait, who's this? He asked. Keep watching, the Shinigami instructed. The vision fast-forwarded. Gojo watched as the child, Naruto, opened his eyes. Then came the more recent events. Naruto shielding his sister, villagers throwing stones, and then, time froze. The stones stopped in midair. Naruto's eyes glowed. Gojo narrowed his own hidden gaze, a rare seriousness taking hold. Those eyes, they can't be. So, the Shinigami asked. Tell me, Gojo, are those, the 6 eyes? Gojo was stunned. Yeah, they are. There's no mistaking it. But how? He turned to the Shinigami. I'm the last of the Gojo clan. Those eyes shouldn't exist anymore, not unless. The Shinigami shook his head. That's the strange part. I checked. He has no blood relation to your clan. Not even a distant ancestral link. By all logic, he shouldn't have them. Quote, Gojo crossed his arms, deep in thought. Then maybe logic no longer applies. The Shinigami smirked. Or perhaps, destiny has decided to meddle once again. Well, he has the 6 eyes. My job here is done, Gojo said, turning away lazily. Wait, the Shinigami's voice echoed firmly. You need to train him. If he doesn't learn to control that power, it will lead to destruction, not just for him, but for the world. Gojo raised an eyebrow. Did you forget? I'm dead. Kind of hard to train someone when you don't exist. The Shinigami grinned. You think I don't know that? I'm going to send you into his mindscape. There, your soul can interact with his. You can train him, and he can learn without the world interfering. Gojo crossed his arms. TCH. Fine. But why are you so interested in that boy, anyway? The Shinigami's expression turned grave. Those eyes. I haven't seen them in centuries. The world has forgotten about cursed energy. Now, they rely solely on chakra, clumsy, leaking, and inefficient. None use it with true precision and up to its true potential. Even the powerful among them are proficient. Quote, he looked toward the vision of Naruto again. But this boy, if trained properly, he can combine cursed energy and chakra. With the 6 eyes, his perception surpasses even the greatest shinobi. He can refine both forces into something the world has never seen. Quote, Gojo was silent for a moment, the weight of what he'd heard settling in. Then he asked, tell me more about him. I want to understand the boy before I teach him. The Shinigami nodded and raised his hand. A stream of memories poured forth. Naruto's birth, his loneliness, the cruelty of the villagers, the pain of rejection, and the fierce bond with his sister. Gojo watched it all. When the vision ended, his usual smirk was gone. All right, he said softly. I'll train him. The Shinigami smiled. Then let it begin.